All right, everybody, thank you. Another episode of the Praying Man podcast. We are on site with one Mr. John Sharps, owner of Sharps Bros. Now, I heard this on another podcast. Do you say bros or brothers?
I say bros.
Bros?
Yeah, yeah. I have a brother, but I named the business after my boys. I
Okay.
was trying to create something that, when I first came out with my first product was this receiver called Hellbreaker. It's modeled after a P40 Warhawk. And at the time, it's kind of hard to have a business if you just have one product, Having a single product's not really a business. But I knew I wanted to get into it for the long haul, and there was no other, the way that came across to me is the best way to make sure there's longevity here is if I name it after two kids that are, at the time, 3 and 5. Try and set it up so that maybe someday one or both of them can work in the business, so I named it Bros.
Yeah, well, with kids of very similar age, I think Hellbreaker's appropriately named. So, all right, quick introductions. If you've listened to us before, I'm Jake Siegel. We got Nate Bailey here and John Sharp. So we're man down. Johnny Aloysius Eastburn Jr. III he's out sick, unfortunately, and it's too bad because a lot of times we do our podcasts, just with ourselves, and this time we actually got to come over to John's place and sit down with him. He has got a very nice man cave. It is.
Yeah, my wife calls this place the Garage Mahal.
Yeah.
That's sort of how we set it up. When we was building it, we actually said, when we were designing it, I said to my wife at the time, I'm like, she's still my wife, but at the time I said, there's never been a guy that was like, I wish I would have made my shop just a little bit smaller.
Right.
It's never been that way, so
True.
We went big on this one. So yeah, it'll hold a boat and car and wood shop and
no, it's rad. You
hidden guns.
This is jealousy level high. So all right. So to anybody that's listening, so if you listen to our podcast, if you're familiar with the stuff that we've done in the past, if you follow us on social media, a lot of stuff you see that we do is we bow hunt a lot, we fish a lot, fly fishing, generally just try to be outdoors. One thing we haven't touched on in the past has been rifles, firearms, but luckily John is local and has made a hell of a name for himself on the firearm side of things. So just because a lot of our audience is used to archery stuff and archery reviews and fishing and hunting stuff, just tell us, how if you met me on the street and you say, hey, what's Sharps Brothers all about? Just tell us.
Sure. Well, Sharps Bros, we're focused on the AR platform, or what I would call the modern sporting rifle platform. And we make some really unique products that are really different from anything else that's out there. So we bring a little bit of artwork, form and functionality artwork to the AR platform. So we have these sort of crazy designs. Our most popular one is called the Jack. It's a skull design that is shaped around the lower receiver of an AR-15. And most of our sales is just selling to guys that are build-your-own types. So we'll buy a stripped receiver from us and maybe buy an upper receiver from us and put a barrel from someone else and stock and everything from other people, scope from other people, and put their own rifle together. Mm-hmm. The AR is really sort of like modern day Legos in a way. The AR platform has this military specification or this mil-spec standard that everyone holds to, and because everyone holds to this mil-spec standard, you can build a rifle that is made from 10 or more different parts. Or if you have an AR-15 in your safe right now that you haven't used in a while and you want to pull it out, you can take the receiver out of it and swap it out with one of ours and make it almost like a brand new rifle at that point. Okay. So that's sort of the people that we're catering to, and they're people that like to shoot for fun, people that hunt with ARs, and people that use them for defense, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So here's what I'll tell anybody that's listening, and we'll do. I think we'll do a video version of this, but we'll just throw some stills of your stuff as we're talking, so people can kind of get an idea of what they're looking at just from your website. But I will tell you right now, if you're listening to this, I would strongly recommend you hit pause just for a second and go to Sharpsbros. Is it sharpsbros.com?
Yeah, sharpsbros.com. Yeah, check it out. It'll give you pretty quickly. You'll see what we're about.
Exactly. So, I would say for those of you who are listening and don't have a chance to jump over to the website, could you explain? You say the Hellbreaker was your first design. Could you just, I think you can. The amount of hours you have behind that thing, just explain it the best you can, and the genesis behind it, and where you came up with the idea.
Sure. Well, I was living in Seattle at the time, and my kids were very young. And I was doing some technical diving in Lake Washington up there. So in Seattle, they have a couple freshwater lakes. One of them is Lake Washington. And it used to have on its shores a naval air station. That naval air station is now called Magnuson Park, and it's like a dog park now, But
Go figure.
used to be in World War II time frame, it was a naval air station, and over the course of those World War II years, they had 7 World War II aircraft crash into Lake Washington. And those, with Lake Washington being really cold and also fresh water, and them not going after those planes at the time, they're still sitting at the bottom of that lake.
Really?
And I've always had an exploration gene and really wanted to start diving and seeing some of those things. And spent a bunch of time, even discovered one lost plane that was in Lake Washington, had not been found since it crashed in 1944.
Really?
That's awesome.
So you found it?
We used side scan sonar. I went back and found I found the military record of when it crashed. It was a TBF-1 Avenger. I found military record of when it crashed, and I went back to the Seattle Library and pulled out microfilm from the newspaper of that time. And I actually thought to myself, like, well, a plane crashed in Lake Washington. This is going to be front page news. It's going to be super easy to find. But by the time I found it in the paper, and I was able to find it, it was like, if you consider what was going on at the time, it was like minor news. And someone died in the crash.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it was maybe page 6, and it was one small paragraph. And but in the paragraph, it said, such and such eyewitness and in those days they actually listed out the person's address, saw it from her living room window, and described the following. So I mapped out where her house was, and then I had a friend that was in the side scan sonar business, which is sort of like, you're familiar with fish sonar.
Yeah.
Well, they do that. They'll tow a fish behind and get really accurate pictures of the lake bottom. And I know someone who does that as full-time work. And I was like, man, can we pull this fish out in this one little area? Because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a plane there. And within like 2 hours, we're looking at a World War II airplane on the sonar.
Cool. Like treasure hunters all.
Yeah, it was.
Nice.
Like treasure hunters, and like you can't take anything off those wrecks, but a lot of them still have the 50 cal machine guns mounted to them, and they're really, this one was, I think, 165 feet deep, so you have to use the helium oxygen mixture to get down there, which makes them sort of inaccessible, and they don't actually even worry about someone stealing the firearms, because you can't just get down.
Plus nobody knew it was there exactly, or you didn't know where it was. So
that's deep enough. It probably weren't worried about somebody stumbling on it either.
Yeah. So believe it or not, that's the long story of how, that's the beginning of how I got into this business, where one rainy Saturday, we had just dove a Corsair that's in the lake the day before. And it was rainy, and we were wanting to get the kids out of the house, feeling cooped up. And so my wife and I took them to the Seattle Air and Space Museum. And as we were walking to find a Corsair, we went past this P-40 Warhawk that says, it was branded O'Reilly's Daughter was the name of the plane, and it was had the tiger or shark face painted on. And I just said to my wife at the time, I'm like, someone should put that on a lower receiver. And at the time, people were laser engraving things, but no one was actually making it part of the design.
Right.
And I just had this idea to make it part of the design. And I had a full-time job at the time, and I did for years after we launched it. I just kept sort of chipping away at trying to figure it out. And I had friends that could help me with the solid modeling, and just spent years sort of trying to refine this first receiver. And then once I had one, finding a customer for it, and then once I had a customer for it, just started coming out with more and more designs,
What was the reaction? I mean, you were very close to this project, obviously, so you were probably how many hundreds of hours into it, who knows, so it was a bit of an old hat by the time you produced it to somebody. Like, what was the reaction when you...
Well, the reaction was super mixed, to be honest. Like, in my early days, or really anyone that is not used to taking critical feedback, like, this is at least my experience. Like, if you're not used to taking critical feedback, you can hear 9 compliments and 1 negative thing, and you sort of over-index on the negative thing.
Sure.
Well, when I was sort of trying to figure out, do I have something here that people will buy or not? I would post pictures of just the solid model before I even had one made. I'd post pictures of the solid model to forums, AR-related forums. And man, like almost instantly, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive or overwhelmingly negative. And it was like 50-50.
Yeah.
And some people were taking time out of their day to like research my email address and send me, really crappy mail about what a horrible person I must be.
How dare you?
Wow. Because we were doing something that was just, no one had ever seen anything like it.
Right.
It's like a modern day version of adorning your weapon, really, but we're just putting it right into the machine work. And I sort of over-indexed for a while on that negative feedback, just thinking like, gosh, is this a good idea or not? Maybe it's not. Maybe I shouldn't pursue this. But eventually, where I settled was based on what I was seeing, which was the people that were posting the negative things about it would actually like help me market this thing, because they would post to Facebook like, "Can you believe this?" And like sarcastic, negative tone.
Yeah.
And half their friends would agree with them, and half their friends would be like, "Ah, I don't know. Actually, that's kind of cool. I think I would buy that."
Yeah. Still gets more eyeballs on it.
Yeah. So I sort of settled out as like anything that drives a ton of passion for or against can be really positive for sales.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to back up just real quick, because one thing that I learned from being in the archery industry is that sometimes we assume people know more than what they know, even the basics.
Sure.
And even admittedly, I don't know a lot about guns, and I sure enjoy shooting them, and but when it gets to the nitty-gritty, I really, I'm going to be blank faced for sure. So, just to, again, if you're listening, to describe kind of what you have. So the receiver is the lower part, basically where if you can think of an AR, where the
trigger and safety and everything like that house the trigger and safety.
Right. And okay, so the magazine is machined out in this intricate, and one thing, like, if you're thinking, like, to your point, people will take laser engraving, and a lot of people are familiar with laser engraving, whether it's like a dog collar or something where somebody's laser engraved, Fido's name into some metal, right?
Yeah.
So this is to the point where it has depth. It is actually machined into the aluminum.
We start with a solid block of aluminum,
Right.
70-75 aluminum, and we machine, a piece of artwork out of that. And that artwork happens to hold a trigger and a safety selector and happens to fit with any other AR-15 part that's out there. And so we don't sell full rifles, but the receiver part, the part that does hold the trigger, the part that we make, is what the ATF considers the firearm, so it gets serialized. And so though we don't sell anything currently that, you can take out of the box and fire a round with, we certainly sell a lot of firearms.
Yeah. But that's what, as far as ARs are, like that platform, that's what most people want to do, is they want to build one, correct? For the most part?
Well, I mean, you get both. You guys, that we sell them. Our biggest customer, our biggest volume goes out as strip sales, guys that want to pick out their own trigger, pick out their own safety selector, pick out all their own parts. When you're building a rifle, it's not unlike a bow where you're like, you're picking out your grip, or not that you're building a bow at home, but if you look at a bow, you've got your cams and you got all these different little parts. Same kind of thing with an AR, except you can go to a distributor or a retailer and buy all those parts and bring it home and assemble it yourself, with with not very much instruction, honestly.
Yeah, and when people are buying your products, even though they're getting other pieces and parts, essentially, I mean, that's the core, the center of the firearm.
Yeah, the
So
whole
they're
firearm
building
is
it
built
around
around what we
your
make.
piece. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about assembling everything. Can you talk a little bit about how realistic is it for average Joe to assemble their own?
Oh, it's super realistic. You if you haven't done it and you like firearms at all, you should do it because it's really satisfying, you know. And there are plenty of YouTube videos out there that will sort of, or even DVDs that you can buy that sort of walk you through step by step, and doesn't take a crazy amount of tools.
Yeah, that was I think that was going to be my next question is how a lot of people say, man, I'm just overwhelmed. You know, there are a lot of different options for all of these different components. Like, where do I start?
Yeah.
Like, how do we even go about starting?
If you wanted to try building your own, the way I would suggest it is you can buy the entire upper receiver, which is the part that holds the bolt carrier group. It has the barrel, it has the hand guard. You can buy those built. And that's really where in the upper receiver where all the accuracy is happening, all the extreme chamber pressuring is all happening in the upper receiver, and then just build the lower receiver. And the lower receiver is a really great place to start because most everything, well, I'm trying to think through, like everything is really drop in, you know, add these threaded screws here, press this spring and detent in, and it's more of like, it's pretty easy to watch, you know, a 1 hour video and be able to see how you could do it for yourself. And then when you do it for yourself, you get exactly, you know, what you're after. And there are so many selections in the AR space to really truly make something your own. And when you take it to the range, you're like, yeah, no, I built this.
Yeah.
You know, and you have this extra level of understanding about every piece of its functionality because you put it together. You know, I'll be one of the first to say, like, you know, I spent time working with you guys, and I still I don't have the equipment to you know, change out my limbs, for example. You know, I would have to take it into Bowtech and do that. But on the AR side, like, it's not like that. You know, you can do this stuff in your garage.
Okay.
You know?
That's good information. I think it's just intimidating. And again, I mean, there was a time where, you know, I couldn't tie my peep sight in or you know, tie a loop. And
here's what I would say.
Can't.
Working on your bow is way more intimidating than building an AR. Way more. And I think working on a bow is harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's good news for anybody that's listening, because I would imagine if you approached the average just outdoorsman, like, you know, I shot a bow once and I've shot some guns, and you posed that question, would you feel more comfortable, you know, working on your bow or building an AR? Most would be like, I'll work on my bow any day.
Yeah, well, it just depends, you know. Like, probably in your circle, you would probably hear the bow.
Exactly.
In mine, it'd be different. Like,
Right.
like I've got bows down there. Like I was just telling you, I was like wanting to change out limbs, and it's like I'm gonna have to take it to Bowtech to do that, or over to your place.
Right. Yeah. We feel a swap happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't. The amount. So I guess one of the things that struck me. So you do. I know, you know, a little bit before we turn the mics on, you know, we talk a little bit about the size of your business and your company and everything. But as far as the marketing and I can't stress enough the aesthetics of your pieces. Like, they are, to Nate's point, I mean, they're pieces of art, really. I mean, so you obviously have an art gene, you know.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, so as far as your design work, I mean, sketching it out, I mean, is that something that, and again, you think of ARs and artists and the way, you know, a piece of art, you know, something would flow. You don't really put those things together a lot. But, I mean, your stuff is real. I mean, it's
I like
gorgeous.
to think of them as functional pieces of art.
Right.
You know, yeah. I mean, and people, when they buy our receivers, they honestly are spending 5 or 6 times as much as they might on the cheapest receiver that would be out there if they were building a rifle. Like, you can find some receivers out there for $40 or $50, and most of my stuff is, you know, $289 or something like that, you know. And so you are buying a very unique piece of artwork, very functional, badass artwork.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also like to think of, or say at least, or I've said this a few times, I guess, over the years, that people have been adorning their weapons since they were throwing spears, or the original flinging of arrows. They were decorating their bows and they were decorating their arrows. And what we're doing is the modern day version of that. We're using very expensive CNC equipment to hog out these sculptures out of solid blocks of aluminum. But at the end of the day, it's not much different than what men have and people with weapons have been doing since the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. I mean, I think even the most grizzled, woodsman and maybe veteran will, maybe in public would be saying, like, I don't care what it looks like as long as it shoots good. But I mean, I think deep down, like, if you have the option to put your own twist on it,
Yeah.
they're going to do it.
We get all kinds, Certainly, we've had some really good sales over the years, so that tells me there's a lot of people that do like to build it their own, and they like to have something that's really unique. And it will, without a doubt, if you build a rifle off of one of our receivers, it will, without a doubt, be the most unique rifle you have in your safe. It's just impossible to beat, really. But there's a lot of people that it's not their flavor,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
The haters out
fine,
there, your promoters.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, we all come from hunting heritage and everything too, and I'll admit I'm guilty of this as well. It's like I've never really thought about getting into the AR platform, and the more we talk with you and learn about it, I get definitely more intrigued about build your own aspect. But one common perception is that the AR platform doesn't have a place in the hunting realm, and so I think a lot of people don't think about an AR platform or an MSR platform,
Sure.
or aren't interested in it because of that. But
yeah, so it'd be good for you to take pictures of this room that we're sitting in, which is surrounded by heads and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, up on the wall we have two, massive hogs. Both were 250-pound hogs. Both my sons took at pretty young ages, 12 and 11 at the time. Both shot with 300 Blackout, which is a 30 caliber round that's made for the AR-15. We've just all of us just came back from Wyoming. We took antelope with ARs. So it's sort of whatever perspective people may have. They may have this perspective that it's just a 5.56 military caliber, for punching holes in paper, or that it's got a big fat, 30 round clip in there, and they make 5-round clips for the AR, and that's what we hunt with. And there's many different calibers. Great calibers for the AR-15 platform. So you have this lightweight rifle platform that can have calibers like some of our favorite ones. So we've taken hog with a 300 Blackout. I've taken hog with this caliber called 6.5 Grendel. It's personally my favorite caliber. It's very, very accurate. That 6.5 caliber is it flies very efficiently through the air. It's a boat tail design. It's still traveling 1,000 feet a second at 1,000 yards, so it's a very long range caliber. So that's the 6.5 Grendel. There's also some really heavy hitters. There's one called 450 Bushmaster. There's one called 458 SOCOM. There's one called 50 Beowulf. I really like the 450. My brother really likes the 458. My dad really likes the 50 Beowulf, and they are just they're sledgehammers.
yeah.
Short range sledgehammer. So my brother's taking hog with a 458, and it's like hitting him in the side with a sledgehammer.
Right.
My dad is taking a hog with the 50 Beowulf, and I think my brother's also taking a hog with the 450 Bushmaster.
Cool.
So yeah, they're great hunting. That's what makes them the modern sporting rifle. You can use them for self-defense. You can use them to shoot long range. I love to shoot long range steel. I have on public land. I have a couple places where I have bought these torso-sized AR-500 steel targets and mounted them to stumps at 500 and 700 yard ranges, and I just love hearing that ting. To pull the trigger and and like be able to count to 2 before you hear the ping come back. You know, like I love everything about
cool.
that long range target shooting, and then I love to hunt with them as well.
Nice.
You see? I guess you know. I've been sitting here trying to think about how to ask this question, but all right, let me see here. The modern perception of AR style rifles is in today's society is usually kind of like your Facebook responses and social responses about your lowers is people either love them or they hate them. Like they're either they're pro or they're anti, right?
Yeah.
So
it really comes down to pro or I don't understand them and therefore I'm afraid of them.
Okay. So I guess
varying levels of that.
Yeah. Honestly, like certainly, you know, anyone that is not pro Second Amendment who might be listening to this, which seems kind of hard to imagine.
It's going to be a slim population, but we welcome them, of course.
But you know, so they probably would not like that oversimplification, but really, truly, that's what it is. You know, I mean, if it fires a round no different than the same round that your grandfather fired. In fact, you know, if you're using the standard 223 caliber or 5.56 caliber, it's actually a lot less powerful than what your grandfather used to hunt deer or elk or antelope.
Yeah, true. It's even smaller than a 243 round,
and much slower.
And I think a lot of that comes down to aesthetics, right? Don't you think? I mean, just the visual of what you see in the movies and
we've been sold this. You know, they came up with the term assault weapon, and that's certainly.
Yeah, I was going to say that the label AR gets misinterpreted a lot as assault rifle.
Yeah,
which isn't accurate.
Assault rifle or automatic rifle or something. It actually stood for armor light.
Right.
But yeah, more and more, and you know, it's just really comes down to what circle of people you talk to. Like more and more, I hear it described as MSR, as the modern sporting rifle, and it truly is the modern sporting rifle. It's a do everything rifle. And that's why it's so popular.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like to call it an assault weapon and sort of drum up additional fear about something that is no more lethal than any other firearm out there.
I mean, like I said, the aesthetics of it. Because once you get behind any rifle, I mean, you're looking at the same thing. You know, you're looking down a barrel, you're looking through a scope, and
it's the mentality and will of the person behind it, you know, more than anything. You know?
Sure.
They don't jump up off of the table and.
I saw a few stats. I'm from Wisconsin, and most people are listening. If you've listened before, you know that. And I've seen a few posts through my social feeds about, you know, this deer season in Wisconsin, 600,000 deer hunters entered the woods. No one died.
Yeah.
There was I think it was the safest as far as accidental shootings and, you know, just whatever reports of gunfire or whatever that wasn't supposed to be. It was a huge success from that standpoint. And to your point, so, you know, you have all of these gun owners all in very close proximity with one another. In most cases, I've sat in my tree opening morning and waited for the sun to come up, and you know, you're sitting in your stand, and you can, you know, it's hardwood, so all the leaves are down, and you're looking across, and you're like, oh, there's some orange. There's another guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that guy was sitting so close to the line, or you know. So I mean, and it is not uncommon to be gun hunting in some of these Midwestern states and sit in your tree stand and see 4 other guys.
Yeah.
You know, that are all have loaded rifles.
Yeah.
And if a buck runs through there, you know, I mean, you can bet your ass it's gonna open up, you know. But somehow everybody manages to
wear orange, be safe. It's really the mentality behind the person behind the trigger, you know.
Mm-hmm. So tell us you have the Hellbreaker, which again, you know, you described it, and it's kind of this homage to.
Yeah, if you can picture the P-40 Warhawk, the tiger faces or shark, you know, people think of them as shark faces that were painted on aircraft. That it's modeled after that and looks a lot like that. We have another one that's called Warthog, which is a hog, and.
I would have guessed that.
Yeah,
I really would have
used that one a lot for hog hunting. I have taken hog with a warthog, which is kind of fun to do.
Cool.
We have our most popular design is called the Jack, which is a skull type design. Pretty hard to go wrong with skulls.
Yeah.
So we sold a lot of the Jack, and I think we're most well known for the Jack. It's our most popular design, as I said.
It's badass.
It's
It
really
is
cool.
freaking badass.
Took us a long time to get it right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we nailed it, and like it.
So what's a long time?
Oh, easily a year. Yeah. With the Jack too, we start modeling them first on the computer in a program called SolidWorks. And when we first had we felt like we had the model done, and with it being a skull, we had gone out and sourced dental models to try and get them perfect and integrated into our model to make it look right. So that's probably the teeth on the Jack are actually based on some dude's real teeth out there, unknown. But when we always print them, and we 3D print them first because it's so expensive to take the 3D model on the computer and program that into a machine and then make the fixtures that it's going to need to hold the parts, and then actually cut one only to be like, oh, I don't kind of like this about it. So we always 3D print the models first. And
Sure.
the first one we printed, when I was looking at it on the computer, it looked great, and I was feeling really positive about it. And then we printed one, and it came out looking just like a baby's head. The teeth were micro, and it was just like ridiculously small, and I knew we were not going to sell very many of them, and it maybe took us another month or more of taking what those were realistic dimensions, truly realistic dimensions, but just don't translate well on a firearm receiver.
Because you're dealing with a curved piece.
Yeah. It's like a rectangular piece, but yeah, it does.
Right.
We're wrapping a face around it and stuff, and so those were actual dimensions and just didn't translate very well. And so we spent another month stretching dimensions and stretching, elongating certain parts, and we printed the next one, and honest to God, it looked like Gomer Pyle. It just looked like a dork.
Yeah.
And again, it was like, well, okay, it's better, but we're just not going to sell any of these, or people will laugh about this, So we went back to the drawing board and stretched dimensions and just changed, kept pulling and stretching until we felt like it would be good. And eventually we got it right. I think it was actually round 4 by the time we finally got it right. Printed one, and then said, now it's time to make the investment in. Let's translate what we've made on the computer into CNC code. Let's build the fixtures, and let's make a few of these and see if we can sell them. And we did. Yeah, it's turned out to be a really popular product, and it's sort of led to a whole bunch of other Jack-related sales. I have a whole airsoft line business where they have licensed all of our designs, but they really were after the Jack initially, and so we have a whole airsoft line of rifles that are sold worldwide. So there's a lot of people say that live in China that cannot own an American rifle, but they can own the airsoft.
Okay.
And they love having American type guns, and the airsoft look very, very realistic, except they have the orange tip.
Right.
And so we have worldwide sales now on the Jack. And
did someone approach you about that, or was that something you went out and thought it would translate? And
I was thinking at the time, honestly, I was thinking about a guy that we've talked about in the archery industry that has licensed designs to the different manufacturers. And I knew I had something unique enough that I was, we'll always make revenue selling the firearm receiver, but it's even in the firearm space, we're really still a pretty niche market. There may be something like 2 million AR-15s sold every year. If I sell 10,000 receivers in a year, I feel like it's like we had an amazing year.
Yeah.
And that's about where we try to land. So even in that space, like for us, 10,000 receivers is a pretty significant amount, but it's just a drop in the bucket into how many ARs are out there. I just was looking for another way to maximize the revenue stream and to get these out to more people than just people in the United States. So we did license with a really big name in the airsoft industry. It's called Evike. And they've been really, really good to us. They did an excellent job in reproducing it, so they look good. I gave myself sort of final of refusal on what it looked like. So I get to sign off on all the first articles and say, yep, it's good to go for production or
No
not.
babies' heads.
Yeah,
Sent that way.
And then honestly, the first models that Evike did, they actually looked quite poor, and they knew they looked poor. But I don't know. I don't think they would have launched them. But the fact that I had written into the contract that I get to approve the first article, they didn't even ask me to sign for it. It's just like, hey, we're going to try again.
Yeah.
I want to show you this to show you that we have progress,
Right.
but we know it's not good enough, and we're going to try again. And they've actually been just a really great company to work with. And then we also have a sort of an export side of the business where, like people in Thailand, for example, they cannot own what their military considers a military caliber. So 5.56 or 2.23, they can't own that, but they can own pistol calibers.
Oh, okay.
And so we have pistol caliber versions of our Jack that shoot 9mm or 40 short and weak or 357 SIG.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so we've seen some export sales as well.
Nice.
It's been a good product.
Yeah.
Definitely got a winner there. The level of detail on that receiver is unreal.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, people hadn't done it before. We have one competitor now that's trying, not to do a skull, but they have come up with we have one receiver that looks like sort of a Spartan helmet. We call it Overthrow. I sort of think of it as just a generic helmet that can be anything from Boba Fett to Sparta to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. No, it's pretty rad, though.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, so we have a competitor that came out with a competing one, but it's almost $100 more expensive than ours. And
Wow.
they may or may not find some success in the market, and is what it is. So the fact that we have a competitor now and tells you that we're doing something right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. So what I guess, what well, I always want to know, like, what are the ideas that didn't make, like, the production floor, right?
Oh, well, I'll tell you this. I have people write me all the time asking me for, a gorilla, a wolf, a tiger's face, a crusader helmet.
We've took the liberty of
snake, dragon, everything.
We maybe suggest Nate came up with this one, unicorn. That was high on his list.
Oh, the one that I've actually seen 3 times this week is Trump.
I wrote that down. I wrote the Trump.
People want a Trump receiver, and like we could do it. And we probably would sell a lot of them.
Might have some licensing issues there, though.
I speaking of Jack Reach, so one of the things that we made is like, we don't ever sell a second, and we never sell a blem. But we have had the occasion where we screw up in making these things, and what we decided to start doing with them was cut them in half and just sell you the skull part, or for a while we were just giving them away, and now we sell them for $50-$60. It's more of like a way to recoup money, but they make really great pen holders or business card holders.
Okay.
And it's the kind of thing you can set on your desk. Like, if you buy one of our skull receivers, it may be your favorite rifle, but only the people that are seeing what's in your safe actually get to enjoy that with you.
Yeah.
But if you have what we were calling scrapjacks, if you have a scrapjack sitting on your desk, like, people are seeing it all the time. So it was actually a really great marketing thing. And you talking about Trump and licensing, Donald Trump Jr. has a scrapjack on his desk.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like, I don't know if he's using it as a pen holder or a business card, but he's shown me a picture of it.
That's cool.
So yeah, I feel pretty good about that. So we could do a Trump one, and honestly, I know that I could make money on it, but it sort of crosses this.
That's lowbrow. I feel it's a little lowbrow.
Yeah, it
it's a
crosses
little
this,
bit.
Yeah,
know?
that's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like it would hurt the brand more than anything. Like, yep, I sure would like to have my wallet be a little bit fatter because we sold a whole bunch of Trump lowers. And if they got mad at us and wanted to like fight us over licensing, it would be even better.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it would just drive more marketing for it. But I feel like it would have I feel like it could have the impact of making our brand into a joke.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, we've never done it.
Yeah. It's
Be better off with a unicorn.
the puppy.
We've got some others. We get approached by some pretty big businesses. I was even working on one for Ruger for a while, but their corporate guys, there were some people inside Ruger that were really excited about what we were working on for them. And then there was someone at the top that was just like, frick this.
Yeah.
We're out.
Yeah.
And so that died. But we're working on another one right now for, I'll just say, a company that's bigger than Sharps Bros
Okay.
in the firearm industry that we've actually been working on for a couple of months. And it's getting closer and closer. So I'm excited about getting that out there.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. And
Good deal.
obviously busy. So, a couple more things on this side of the business, and then we wanted to talk to you a little bit about just some more recreational stuff that we follow you on Instagram and stalk you here and there and see, you get out and get after it with your boys. So want to talk a little bit about that. So one thing that, we talk about, and again, when you, whatever you're into, there's a vernacular and a slang and a, kind of a way that you talk about your profession, or not necessarily profession, but your passion, right?
Yeah.
So, being in the archery industry, we, usually we can spot kind of a guy or gal that is trying to fake their way through a conversation, just in as far as their knowledge on the sport.
Yeah, sure.
And usually that comes in archery when they like mimic how to draw a bow, like we kind of all have our own little ways of how to like, because you do it, you've done it a freaking million times, right? And so you like, oh, there he was, and I wait till he put his head down and I drew back on him, and you like, and you watch that person do it, and you're like, okay, he's legit, right? And then we've worked with people, some of the people we've kind of talked about before we turn this on, and, they do that, and you're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's never shot a bow in his life, or it's maybe been once, So anyway.
So you're going to ask me, are there
Is there, what's like that dead giveaway thing, like when somebody's trying to talk guns with you?
For me, it's not necessarily what they may give off signals based on what they would say, I guess, maybe talking about a caliber that's not suitable for a certain size weapon. But for me, a lot of it is the face-to-face. Like, so I was showing you guys guns earlier. If either one of you had ever swept me with with the rifle barrel, even though we had talked about it ahead of time that everything's unloaded, if either one of you had swept me with that barrel, then I would just know, like, okay, we're just at a different level here between how we feel about firearms. Like, even though we've talked about them being all unloaded, if you
full
had
disclosure,
done that,
I know what that means, but could you just explain?
So
it?
Swept means like if you had pointed the gun at me in any way, then that would have put me in. I wouldn't have been mad or anything like that. I would have corrected you.
Yeah.
But then then I would have known what level of experience that we were talking with. I wouldn't be thinking that you're an idiot or anything. Just like you grew up with a different level of skill or discipline, or you just haven't been around firearms enough to know, or your dad didn't yell at you enough as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how my boys are now. I certainly have had to do a lot of correction because I am raising two really young shooters. So both my boys have now taken hog and antelope, and we got into duck hunting. Actually, we got into duck hunting because some of their first hunting experiences was when I was hunting with my bow, my invasion bow, trying to take deer, but also trying to be a dad and doing spot and stalk, and I can't take them up in a stand really. At least the stands I didn't have were not like 2-person stands. And I don't know if you've ever seen what it would be like to have a 5 or 6-year-old in a stand, better have a Game Boy or something. But, the spot and stalk was so difficult. And actually I've only taken 3 deer with a bow, and those are only things I've taken with the bow besides turkey. The only big sort of medium-sized game, I guess. I took all 3 of those with one of my boys in tow, and they would be, 6 or 8 at the time.
Wow.
But that was so difficult that I started thinking like, man, I was also feeling like I need to preserve some hunting land because I grew up hunting 5,000-acre ranches that we had access to through someone who worked at a timber company, was friends of the family and stuff, and not realizing how lucky we were to hunt on, just have amazing hunting property until such time as I'm trying to find hunting property for my boys, and it's really hard. So I went in with some other guys and we bought 30 acres near Corvallis, and that for the sole purpose of hunting ducks there. So we plant corn in the summer, we flood the corn as the season comes around, and then we hunt ducks on it. And one of the reasons I did that is because it makes it way easier to hunt with the boys.
Yeah.
You know, and now, like before they were carrying rifles, now my youngest carries a single shot 410, and my oldest carries a single shot 20 gauge. And when they're carrying, I just leave my shotgun at home. But in the early days when we were just sitting in the blind, like, you know, ducks are not as keen as a blacktail is. And when you're hidden in a blind, you know, and our blinds are big enough that we can move around in them and eat donuts and drink coffee and stuff like that, you know, and still get out early and experience the field and stuff like that. So we've really been into duck hunting the last, I guess, 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Partly because I was trying to preserve land and then find a place where I could hunt with some kids that are young. And now, actually, just this year, you know, last year, my oldest, who's 13 now, but was 12 at the time, took his first duck. He's already taken a duck this year, and my youngest, who's about 10 and a half, he just shot a really nice mallard, his first mallard, with a 410 shotgun.
Yeah.
And we practiced all summer of just shooting skeet. I would just stand behind them, and they would just shoot one right after the other. While one was loading, the other was shooting, and I'm
right here
I'm
in
back
town.
there
That's impressive. Yeah.
throwing skeet. Yeah. I could do that with turkeys in town.
Yeah.
But I have not.
Yeah. That's cool. So speaking, I know Nate had drummed up a couple of questions, you know, regarding. So we live in Eugene, Oregon, which fairly liberal town.
Yeah.
That's probably putting it lightly.
Yeah.
That is putting it lightly. You know, what's it been like for you as a dad, and you know, doing what you do? I watched Nate and I watched Lord of War with Nicolas Cage before we came, so we want to really prep ourselves for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm just like Nick Cage.
I knew it. I just pegged you like that. But no, I mean, what's it like to, you know, for them, especially being teenagers? I mean, I don't know. We're not too far off in age. It's like I remember walking in to my high school with a gun in its case, and I was giving it to a buddy, and granted I lived in kind of rural Wisconsin, but like nobody checked up. Like I walked into school with an unloaded gun, and like obviously that's not happening today. I mean, but what's it like for your kids and the conversations you've had with your kids? And obviously they have a passion for the sport. They know what you do. They know the influence that you have on the industry, and I mean,
yeah, it's a delicate balance now, I guess, because I was sort of like you. Like I'm 45 now, and I went to Marshfield High School in Coos Bay, and I drove to school with a rifle hanging in the back of my pickup, you know, in the window of my pickup, and that was not uncommon in the least. And we would go hunting after school, you know. And there was a time when I actually went to school, not with even a hunting rifle in there, but we were going to go shoot after school, like just target shoot after school. And so I had an AK hanging in my window, you know, of all things. And still people were like, they maybe looked a little different back then, but it was not like alarming, you know, because we just didn't have to worry about the same thing. So my boys know that, I mean, obviously they know their dad's in the firearm business, and they wear Sharps Rose gear, and I think they're quite proud of it. And they know that the company was actually named after them, you know. But they have to be very careful and go into schools, and you know, their friends know that I'm in the firearm business, and they talk about hunting, and you know, when they take time off of school to go to, you know, hunt antelope in Wyoming or something, the teachers know why they're gone and ask them what's up when they get back. But they also can't wear some of our gear, you know, our T-shirts that have an AK-47 on them, or a T-shirt that has an AR-15 on them. I don't know if they actually would get kicked out of school, but the schools are so sensitive about it that they're very sensitive about it, you know. Like they'll wear a Sharps Rose hat that has our logo and says Sharps Rose, and they're super proud to say that that's their same last name and that's the family business. But they've sort of been really indoctrinated into not doing it. I mean, people have gotten kicked out of school for making a freaking Pop-Tart look like a gun.
right?
You know?
Yeah.
So we live in very, very sensitive times right now.
Yep.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Mine's 5 years old now, and just the things that I see at his preschool. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's just different. It's different times, and the things that you have to be aware of, and the amount of, you know, just calculations that you kind of have to run on a daily basis. Like again, I get more of in concern for them and what they're doing and what they're portraying and what's being portrayed to them. It's definitely different times. So I would imagine that adds another layer, especially kind of where they are as an age.
One way that I would compare it is that, like, I went to Oregon State, but because the boys are growing up in Eugene, like, one of them's a big Oregon State fan, but the other one is a huge Duck fan. It's like impossible for like I grew him up here. So I can see, if we weren't deliberate about it, it would be really easy to fall prey to whatever liberal arts the schools are teaching, So, I mean, they're quite common discussions. I take the kids to school every day, and we listen to AM radio on that short drive in, and there's almost always something to talk about on there, whether it's the budget that just got put out or something that happened in the news. So there's always lots of talking points, and just try to be almost like what the news should be, which is, share both sides of the story rather than a very biased side.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But you've got a line of communication open for sure.
Yeah.
Which seems like a lot of people, like you mentioned before, are just not familiar or uneducated or flat out scared about it. And then most of those folks are fairly unwilling to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or educate themselves or whatever. They just have a set opinion, and it is what it is, and they're not interested in.
Yeah, or they see a firearm and it actually just instills a bunch of fear, and they would never even dare touch it, for it might blow up on them or something.
Right.
Like if you're raising your kids that way, you're really doing them a major disservice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can definitely tell. I mean, adults that get into firearms later that never grew up with them. It's interesting to see how timid and like slow the learning curve is as compared to if you
just grew up around it.
Right.
Yeah, it becomes a lot more innate if you grew up around it. An interesting thing that we're seeing now is in the firearm space, where I imagine if I asked either of you guys your first introduction to firearms, it was your father or an uncle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
More and more people's first introductions to firearms are video games. Video games are replicating, without licensing fees, they're replicating our firearms down to the sound and cyclic rate, and trying to make them exact of what real firearms are like, at least displayed in the game. And more and more people, that's their first introduction to firearms. Like they can come in and be quite knowledgeable about the type and the caliber and the cyclic rate and the quote unquote damage it may be able to do in the video game, I guess. But then not really be experienced in handling them or really know anything about.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about sweeping anybody on a video game.
Yeah,
No, quite the opposite.
Yeah, but it's kind of it actually it's a focus area for us. And kind of interesting, like some of the bigger game companies, like Valve is a huge one. They create these games that have modern day firearms in them, but they want nothing to do with the actual firearm manufacturer.
Right.
The one place I found that is not that way is Ubisoft, and so we've been talking to Ubisoft, trying to get them to use some of our designs in their games because they're super unique.
Have you seen any of your stuff pop up, or at least like replicas of?
No, we've only been working with them for the last 6 months or so, and it's the kind of thing where it may take a couple of years before it shows up in a Tom Clancy game or something like that.
Your kid's got to be jacked about that.
I would be jacked about that if it happened,
right?
Because you start seeing the Jack rifle in a game, and more people, their first introduction to firearms is the video game, and then when they come of age and they're ready to buy a firearm, I want them buying a Jack.
Yeah.
I feel like Bill Gates used to say, one PC for every desktop. Like I want at least one Jack in every safe.
Yeah.
So. I know you guys both have safes without jacks.
We're jackless, as they say. We're jackless. Couldn't say the same about
John. We'll have to work
John
on that.
if he was here. Yeah. No. So quick, just like side fun fact, speaking of Bill Gates, you worked for Microsoft.
Yeah, I spent from I guess I started to work there in 2000. and
This was back when Microsoft made rifles. Most people don't even know that.
Yeah.
So,
I worked in the hardware space, and so it started off as this really small group that designed and had manufactured and marketed and sold the mouse and keyboard side of the business, and then it grew to the Xbox business, and then grew into what's now the Surface business. So I've spent time on computer mice, computer keyboards,
so what is
Xbox accessories, and Surface laptops.
So what is your degree in then?
I have a business degree.
Oh,
I'm
really?
super mechanically inclined, so I like anything to do with that, and so that's kind of helped me out in the business. But at Microsoft, I was a program manager, and for a long time, I was in charge of overseeing a bunch of their manufacturing operations. So it started off as overseeing their mouse operation, my first job with them in 2000. And at the time, they were making 1 million computer mice a week. It was
Holy shit.
13 40-foot high cube containers filled with mice leaving China every single week.
Wow.
I have or actually a little bit more than 2 years of just on the ground time in China, spending a lot of time in Chinese factories, helping them get products launched out the door. Again, like from mouse to Xbox controllers and consoles to Surface related stuff. And that's actually one of the things that sort of propelled me into our own manufacturing business, making sure that it was 100% U.S. made, because I've seen many products get made overseas. Millions upon millions of dollars worth of products being made overseas. When I feel like we've kind of lost that American manufacturing skill. But actually, Bowtech is sort of a diamond in the rough in that way, in that they have this local manufacturing plant where everything is designed there, and then the parts are brought in and turned into a bow, and strings are made there, and then they're out the door. They're boxed and out the door. Like, that is becoming more and more rare, but it's something that we model ourselves sort of off that Bowtech way, wanting to be able to manufacture everything in the United States and create U.S. jobs and U.S. manufacturing jobs, U.S. sales jobs, marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff.
It's cool.
So that being said, I know one thing in the archery, on the archery side of things, the consumer base was very critical of things that were made overseas, especially with the bows, right? Like, to come out with a bow that was made in China or Vietnam or something like that would have been and would be, unless something's changed, which I highly doubt, would not go over well. I mean, all the bows, PSE, Matthews, Hoyt, there's speculation on some of this stuff, but for the most part, all that stuff is made in the USA. On your side,
Use final assembly.
Yeah, and even so, I think most of those, and I can't speak 100%.
Sometimes the trick will be they'll source the parts in Asia and then do the final assembly here. Some big name companies do that in all different spaces, not just archery or firearms. They'll source their aluminum, for example, from China and get it really cheap there, and then, or have it forged in China, so it's like sort of an 80 or 90% net shape, and then do the final machining here. But that's not something that we would even consider.
Okay, so my question is: are the consumers as passionate about where they're okay?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would. One, it's just not something that is in us to entertain. But if we did entertain it, we would rightfully just be thrown to the curb quite quickly.
Yeah.
And we should be. If we were to do that, then that's that's how it should be.
Huawei Sharps brothers.
Yeah. All of our aluminum is sourced in the United States, and then we use our manufacturing facilities, of course, U.S. based, and we're distributing to dealers across the nation. So it's a very U.S. made, U.S. centric business. We do export products, but it's not like we make them overseas and ship them in those other countries. They're made here and exported here.
We get some the other way for a change. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's sort of, it doesn't make that big of a dent in the whole import export business, but makes a little bit of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you feel good, sleep better at night. Though, for sure.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Well, we had a couple questions just about enough about guns and firearms, but I know Nate's been following you a little closely and wanted to ask you a couple questions about some of the stuff when you do get a chance to break away and stuff that you like to do. You mentioned duck hunting. You got a pretty sick raft downstairs.
Yeah,
Um,
rafting is like one of my. Well, what's your
Yeah.
question gonna be about?
I was going to ask you just kind of in general, what else do you like to do outside? But I wanted to ask you about rafting too specifically.
also,
Rafting
Nate
in the
wants to
Rogue.
borrow it. So
Yeah, well, I
what
would
is it?
love to take you guys down the Rogue. Like I do some guiding on the Rogue River. So the Rogue River is my favorite river. It's an Oregon river. It's got this section that's about 42 miles long. That's considered the wild and scenic section, where you cannot take a motorized craft through that section. And there's no roads really in and out. I mean, there's some pretty remote things. Like if you had to take a Jeep, there might be a Jeep trail or something. But generally speaking, if you set your raft or boat in at the beginning of this 42-mile section, which is typically done in 3 or 4 days to get through the 42 miles, like there's only one way out, and that's to go through it. And that really has become just one of my favorite things to do. We started off just running Tahitis when I was camping with the family around Agnes and stuff. And now, like, I like to backpack and spend a lot of time in the High Cascade Lakes, or not a lot of time, but I try to get into the High Cascades at least once or twice a summer. It's one of the reasons I really like Oregon is just, and especially Eugene, besides being sort of behind enemy lines, we're an hour from the Umpqua River, we're an hour from the Willamette Pass, or pretty close to just get past the Cascades. The Rogue River is only really a couple, 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Some really beautiful land. And so the nice thing about rafting is, I have a 15-foot 6-inch raft that holds a cooler and dry boxes, and I can put propane in there and tents, and you can it's like glamping almost,
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, to me, it's the perfect vacation because it is a wild section of the river with class 4 and one class 5 rapid on it, and
It's pretty
you got to
gnarly
be on
water.
your toes,
So where did you learn? I mean, there had to be a first time, right? That you went down there solo.
Yeah,
mean-
I went the first time I went down the Rogue and started learning it. I went with someone else was guiding it, but I asked them to let me row my own raft,
Okay.
and I sort of learned to row a raft or row a boat in that
That
case.
section's not a section you would want to try and figure out by yourself.
Yeah, and the nice part about the Rogue is it actually gets. I mean, there's a major falls the first day, but that you have to navigate around, not through. But the rest of the time, it's like day 2 and day 3 get progressively harder, and then like the last day, you go through this rapid called Blossom Bar that typically kills people every year. But you have sort of this run up to it, and if your skills aren't up to it, or you don't understand how to run it, or you don't feel like you could run it, because you have to make some really critical moves, like an S turn right in the middle of really high flowing water. If you can't do it, then you can walk around and someone else can take your boat for you. But that's how I got started in it. And yeah, it's one of those things where your cell phone doesn't work. You get in the boat, you're on vacation, but you're working, you're having to read the river. Like I just like everything about that. So it's my favorite thing. My favorite pastime besides hunting and fishing and stuff is getting out on the river.
And your kids dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
awesome.
boat is big enough that it'll hold my wife and 2 boys up front. And this last summer we went through, we also took an inflatable Tahiti through, and so in some places where they were just class 1 or class 2 rapids, my 13-year-old was able to run those. Like he ran the whole. Once we were past Blossom Bar, I think he ran the entire river out from Blossom Bar out, which is just generally class 1 or class 2.
Yeah.
So, it's a really good time.
Yeah.
You ever had any close calls? We know Jake and I know a couple guys. The last couple years, 2 different guys swamped their drift boats.
This past
Abandoned
summer,
ship
I had to help
situation.
someone. They got stranded on a boat and had to do a Z line or Z drag to like pull their boat off. And someone went in the river that we had to he was underwater for quite a while, and then actually got evac'd out. Like knew he was not going to be able to make the rest of the trip.
Oh shit.
But I don't know. I've definitely been for Blossom Bar. Blossom Bar is the one I always think of because it is a class 5, but like rapid wise, it's what you would consider a class 3, but consequences, it's definitely a 5.
Very technical.
Yeah, it's a very technical one, and I always have made my kids walk around it. Partly because a couple times I've gotten high sided on a rock, and it will take the boat and tilt it up 45 or 50 degrees like in an instant.
Wow.
And people have to get high side. And if you got 3 people sitting up in the front of your boat, it's almost impossible for everyone to get to the high side.
Sure.
If you got 3 people up there. And
Yeah.
so I've made them always walk around that, sort of to their dismay. But I'm the dad, and
Yeah.
they walk around it, and a couple times, I've been high sided on a big elephant sized rock out there and been able to get off of it just fine because of the raft was still nimble and I wasn't worrying about a 10-year-old rolling off the side.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, but generally, not too many. Not a close call. I think
Yeah.
a lot more close calls in diving than in rafting.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
At least rafting, you're typically breathing air. You're above.
Yeah.
Is that like equipment malfunctions that occur
Yeah. Give
when
us
you're
a couple of close
diving? Or
calls.
Well, I mean, I had to recover a body once on a dive when I was in college. Someone just ran out of air and didn't come up, and by the time we found her, she was dead. And so I've been really close to some pretty significant life impacting things, like find her, get her back to the boat. Her husband's in the boat.
Oh, man.
Coast Guard helicopter comes flying over above because someone in the boat had called that we needed help.
Were you
know.
diving with her?
She wasn't my partner, but we were on the same. We had left the same boat.
Oh wow.
She was diving with her husband, and I was diving with a friend of mine.
What the heck?
And the friend and I came back from our dive, and I remember the husband popped up when his dive was done, and we said, "Where's your wife?" And he looked back, and he's like, "She's right behind me." And then she just wasn't, and we ended up talking to police like months later about it, and they had analyzed her dive computer, and she had come all the way up to like 3 feet.
What?
3 feet from the
Oh,
surface.
man.
You gotta be kidding
But
me.
she ran out of air and panicked and couldn't get her weight belt off, and she literally probably could see the light of the surface
Oh wow.
and sunk all the way back down.
God.
Son of a bitch.
And then in Seattle, I had done some sort of similar, because in these wrecks that we were diving in Seattle, most of them were over 200 feet deep. There was maybe only 10 or 12 people in Seattle that could dive that deep. And so I used to get some contract work. Like sometimes it would be insurance, or sometimes it'd be something else where they needed help getting something off the bottom. And in one case, it was a body. But I've done a little bit of work like that. So yeah, diving has been a lot more.
Wow.
I actually sort of stopped diving when I had kids, because I remember having this conversation with my wife where I'm like, I think I'm going to be diving less and less. And she looked at me and she was like, well, why? And I'm like, well, just the impact if something goes wrong. Like, you don't want the kids growing up without a dad, because stuff does go wrong, I mean, you can be an excellent diver and even be able to train on how to deal with malfunctions. But, sometimes you get what's called a stack tolerance. And if a bunch of things stack up the wrong way, it can go catastrophic really fast. And I actually had an argument with my wife about it. She's like, what do you mean all this time you thought you could die and just like leave me and I'd be fine, But now that we have kids,
that's how
you're not diving anymore. Like, yeah, exactly. You would have found someone else.
Yeah.
I don't want them finding
You're
someone
gonna be
else.
fine. Yeah.
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 Yeah, but rafting is, the Rogue and the other things we prep quite a bit. We track our progress mile by mile and rapid by rapid. And
Oh really?
each rapid I have marked out, like, this one, run the right chute and pull left at the bottom, or look for this rock at the bottom and stuff. If you guys have never floated it, we should definitely plan some.
Yeah,
it's
man,
just a
that'd be
ton of fun.
awesome. That'd be
It's a
great.
ton of
Be
fun.
nice if like that class 5 was at the beginning, so you could kind of like relax and enjoy the rest of the week.
Now,
Yeah.
I've actually gotten, so I used to be that way too. Like day 3, or day 2, my family would comment about how stressed out I'd be towards the end of the day, because I
Yeah.
knew in the morning that I had to get through Blossom Bar.
Yeah.
And as soon as we got through Blossom Bar, it was like I had 2 beers in me or something.
Yeah.
It was just ecstatic all of
Yeah.
a sudden.
Sure.
Because, I'm not that way when I don't have my family with me, but there are a couple of places.
Yeah.
There's one big long run called Mule Creek Canyon, which is just prior to Blossom Bar, which is this crazy narrow restriction. Like your oars touch the rock on either
Really?
side. The
I
canyon
saw your
is so
video of
narrow.
that. Yeah.
And there are some huge holes in there. And if you avoid them, you're going to be fine. If you get sucked into one of them, your boat is for sure going to flip.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to ride the next 10 or 15 minutes down some super high flow. And your life jacket is not going to be strong enough to keep you above all the time. Like it will
Right.
suck you under and then pop
Yeah.
you back out and suck you back under and pop you
Ugh.
back
You
out.
could tell from the video you posted, it's the crazy hydraulics in that section.
Yeah.
You just watch the way how the water moves on the surface, and
Yeah.
that the currents underneath are just
Yeah, there's
unreal.
one particular rapid inside Mule Creek Canyon that's called Coffee Pot. And in like the 2,000 cubic foot a second range, they call it the Terrible Twos. And it really just looks like
Oh.
if you can imagine a coffee percolating.
Yeah.
And it sucks you in there and you can be bouncing around the top and all of a sudden it's just like a hand comes from underwater and will just start pulling your boat under, and you gotta be on it and pulling yourself out of that. And there's no way out. Like you're gonna hit Coffee Pot. And it's sort of the rapid will breathe in and out. It's like sometimes right now it's calm and the next second it's not. It's breathing in and out and in terms of its severity.
so there's no way to pass it by completely. You've got to go in it
it's
to some
impossible,
degree.
Yeah,
or
it's only like 12 feet wide right there. So
Oh,
it's you've got a 15-foot boat that won't fit through a sideways. So you're going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a ton of fun.
Yeah. Man, what a kick in the
for
pants.
sure.
Yeah, very exhilarating. And then we do like the other thing is like my parents have a place on the Umpqua River down by Elkton,
Yeah.
and it's just phenomenal smallmouth bass fishing.
Yep.
And that's about the only fishing I do now. Like it's sort of hard for me to sit in a boat all day for one salmon.
Yeah.
But
the umpqua
smallmouth
will
I can
ruin you
take
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, smallmouth we can take a canoe out and hit 10, and 30 minutes later come back and have a Coors Light or something.
Oh, man.
Like
On good days, we fished that quite a few times too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like literally every cast for the first half hour.
Yeah. Or if it's bad, you
Can
just,
be.
especially when I'm fishing with the kids, if it's bad, we just flip to worms and
Oh,
go
gosh.
sit to a rock, and it's just like,
Yeah,
it's a ton of fun for them,
Yeah. It's beautiful down there. I mean, we won't air any of this part because we won't want anybody else to go down there. But,
Yeah.
all right, so we're going to finish this up. We like to do, I think we actually missed this the last couple episodes just because of our long-windedness or whatever it may be. But we like to do Would You Rather. And John, in spirit, sent these over.
Oh, great.
Probably from the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
Poor guy.
He's been living on the toilet.
Yeah,
all day.
he's not feeling well. So, all right. So these are kind of directed towards you,
I like those last.
Towards me?
Sharpsy. Yeah.
I guess we can do rapid fire too.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I want to ask. So, would you rather have dinner with Samuel Colt or hunt one day with Teddy Roosevelt?
Oh, I guess I would hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good deal. You got these queued up too? No.
Another one was assuming it doesn't have sentimental value to you. If you're lucky enough to own, I'm sure you've got your favorite rifle, but if you're lucky enough to own your dream automobile too, which would you rather be forced to sell?
It's got a nice truck down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually kind of have my dream vehicle right now. Like I'm not like a sports car guy, but I have one of these Gen 2 Raptors, and it's like I don't have any vehicle envy.
It's
with
pretty
people.
nice.
So now, am I going to be in this question? I'm forced to sell this vehicle.
Yeah, or your favorite rifle. Which one? would you
Oh
choose?
man, well,
And we got to take sentimental value. So we're lucky enough to
Yeah.
see some of your pieces, and like your grandpa's gun. I mean, we wouldn't put that up there. But
yeah.
Like
Well, I was
maybe
gonna
your
say,
favorite.
like I have a couple that are like my grandfather
Right.
bought them in 1924, and like I'm just I guess I would. It's not worth what the Raptor's worth, but I wouldn't like give that up to anyone.
hmm
Um,
So that aside,
yeah.
we'll take that out of the equation.
I don't know. That's a hard question.
That's why we play
That's why
the
we
game.
try to. That's how we try to come up with them.
The vehicle. I'd sell the vehicle, I guess. It's impossible for me to take the sentimental out of the
Right.
firearms because that's half of it.
You're right. Yeah.
Sure.
Otherwise, they're just a few $1,000, and then it's a lot easier to let that go. If there wasn't the sentimental value, I'd let the vehicle go.
All right.
This is a John special here. Johnny, we appreciate you. Would you rather get shot in the chest, bulletproof vest, of course, or with a beanbag gun to the groin?
Dang, man.
Yeah.
He's brutal. I would. Frick. So the beanbag, you don't have any protection.
I mean, I give you a pair of boxers and
Well,
maybe.
no, let's say you got a cup on.
Okay, if
Yeah,
I had
but
if I had
still-
the cup, I'd take the
A beanbag
beanbag.
round to the even with a cup. so
If I
it's
had the cup,
not
I
gonna
still
feel
think
real
I would
good.
take the beanbag, though. I'm like cringing even thinking about
Oh,
it because the idea of like the Kevlar or whatever not being effective.
Oh man.
One of
Oh,
them
right.
has a chance of death.
Yeah.
The other one has, certain chance of. Both have certain chance of pain, absolute chance of pain. One of them has accidental death associated with it. So I have to go
Yeah.
with the logical thing,
Yeah.
And
even
you
though
got
even though
kids.
my nuts are
You
involved.
got your boys already, so
Yeah, my
Sure, your
family's
work's
all
done
here.
there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, cool, man. Anything else you want to? Okay, so website is, and dude, you have a massive following on Instagram.
Pretty good, yeah.
Over
I mean,
600
well,
people follow you.
Yeah.
Wait, that's it. So
Well, he
six.
posts
Yeah,
pictures of beautiful guns all day.
Yeah, I
long.
think
Yeah,
we're
no
coming
doubt.
up on 70,000 right now for Sharps Bros. My J Sharps account's not it's not anywhere near that, but it's not sharing the
too
cool
many
guns
pictures of
that-
you and you're holding your Coors Light,
Yeah,
doing a
Yeah.
jujitsu pose was
yeah,
probably.
yeah,
It's just
exactly.
not pulling as many followers.
Yes, for some reason.
I don't get it
I
either,
need to show-
man.
show
I
more
think it's
leg or
great. I'd
something.
like it. I comment, repost. Okay, but seriously, if you're even if you're a casual gun shooter, and when I say gun shooter, because if you shoot a shotgun or if you've ever shot a Red Ryder BB gun, that's good enough. Go to sharpsbros.com and check. I mean, this stuff is, because again, like I like guns. I have a case full, and I some of them are sentimental. They're from my grandpa, but I got on your website. And I immediately was like, to Nate's point, I was making a list. I'm like, I gotta get one.
Yeah, they're like nothing you've seen before if you haven't
Yeah.
seen our stuff before. And then we have a bunch of different flavors of them. So like, hopefully we have a flavor that sort of speaks to you.
You bet, and look for the Trump soon enough.
Yeah, yeah. Someone will do it. Probably not us.
That's a good call.
You Cerakote guys would have fun with that design, though.
Oh man,
Oh my
Varying
gosh, they
shades
would.
of
Yeah,
orange, and
Orange,
yes,
yellow.
they would. Yeah, they would. Yeah, we'd for sure get the hair in there.
Yeah,
we
no
would mess
doubt.
that up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nader, you got anything else?
No, we appreciate your time, John.
John, thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right,
Thanks
buddy.
for coming over.
You bet.